The Minnesota Fighting Vikings have a fantastic edge rushing duo in Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. In fact, you can make it a quattro if you throw in DJ Wanham as well as Patrick Jones a second. But as we've said on here a bunch, it is a passer and get the passer league, and you cannot have enough dudes who can get after the quarterback's ass, especially late in the season. There's some attrition, there's some fatigue, especially late in games. Having as many fresh bodies get after that quarterback at 3rd and 8 with the game on the line in the playoffs is extremely important, man. Now, you could say, yes, why don't you just trade for interior defensive line pass rush? Well, it's not like Jeffrey Simmons is on the trade block, man. But the Vikings should consider trading for some more edge rushing help, and we'll get into why here, because there's some sexiness out there. There really is. Robert Quinn is on the block. Brian Burns, even though the Panthers said, we are not trading Brian Burns. We had to offer for 2 first-round picks. That just means up your bids. Brian Burns is one of the best young defensive linemen in the league, as well as projects like Kilavon Chason from Jacksonville, formerly the pride of LSU, former teammates with Justin frickin' Jefferson. Kwesi has shown that he loves the Mama I Can Change Him project. You look at Ross Blacklock, sort of a failed second-round pick. You look at Jalen Rager, failed first-round pick. Come on in, man. That's right. So the reasons why trade for an edge rusher, even though you have Danielle and Zadarius and Wanham and Patrick Jones second, you cannot have enough. You can literally not have enough dudes who can get their own rush, who can get after the quarterback's ass and cause disruption back there. Danielle is also out of position. Like, even though he's starting to come around, it will take some time. And I feel like that Donatella has sort of opened up at times. You're seeing a lot more 4-man fronts. You're seeing Blacklock out there at the 3-tech having 20, 25 snaps a game. But you can have certain packages where Danielle is in his natural left defensive end, close side of the field, hand in the dirt and getting after it. And then you can have all these other guys that have more experience as a stand-up outside linebacker, the guys that have done this for years in the league, years in college, etc. And you can just make sure that all the square pegs go into the square holes, as opposed to the other way around. Zadarius is also 30. Also, we need to point out that Danielle and Zadarius are basically in contract years. So Zadarius Smith signed a 3-year contract with the Vikings, but I mean, the last 2 years are absolute toilet paper. If and when he does stay with the Vikings, he's gonna have a freshened up contract. And Danielle, the way that reworked his contract and gave him the roster bonus, he's basically in a contract year as well. So that could be the reason why you go after Brian Burns. That could be a reason why you go after one of these young superstar edge rushers. And also, lastly, you literally just cannot have enough. We cannot emphasize that enough. Plus, there are ways that all these guys can play on the field at the same time, and we've seen this. So you've seen packages where Zadarius and Wanham and Danielle are on the same, field at the same time. You've seen Zadarius and Danielle and Patrick Jones second. You can do all this, even bringing in a new guy. Now, couple of edge trade targets. Now, this is a bit of a scatter shot. So you have a young superstar in Brian Burns. You have a bit of an old guard guy in Robert Quinn. You have the veteran cheap version in Jerry Hughes. And then you have the young Mama I Can Change Him version of Kilavon Chason. So Brian Burns, 24 years young, 29 pressures this year, 5 sacks, absolutely getting after it. He was a bad dude at Florida State. Has experience hand the dirt, has experience standing up. I mean, he was almost a safety at Florida State. That's how insane things were. He's insanely light, but just gets after the quarterback. And we also broke it down how much cap the Vikings would have to take on. We're factoring in a trade going down on, say, next Monday or Tuesday, right before the deadline on November 1st. So not as of this week. So the Vikings would only have to take on about $1.377 million in cap space. Now, Burns, of course, is going to be in line for a contract, so he's going to get paid. Trade comp, 2 firsts plus. I mean, the Panthers coming out and saying, "Well, we had an offer for 2 firsts." That just means up your bid. So 2 firsts and a fourth, 2 firsts and a player could be somewhere in that neighborhood. But this would be a trade that you would make when you're planning for the future. And the future may or may not include Danielle. It may or may not include Zadarius Smith for all the reasons that we listed above. And of course, we love them, but it is what it is. And Brian Burns is the future, man. Brian Burns is an absolute monster. And then you have Robert Quinn of the Bears, who is struggling a bit. So it's ironic because the Vikings have moved from a 4-3 to a 3-4, and the Bears are moving from a 3-4 to a 4-3. And Robert Quinn, even though back in St. Louis, you can find me in St. Louis, he was fine. Like him and Chris Long were great as bookend defensive ends, but he really found his sweet spot in the Bears 3-4. He had 18.5 sacks last season, only 14 pressures and 1 sack this year so far. So he could be potentially on the trade block, even though the Bears had to win against the Patriots. I still think that the Bears are going to be in selling mode at the trade deadline, and Robert Quinn could be a valuable piece. And their GM Ryan Poles could see, he's like, all right, we can get some value from Quinn. He's probably not going to be part of the long-term plan here because he is 32. He does have a sizable contract. Now, the drawback would be Robert Quinn is 32, even though Robert Quinn's a stud. And would you give up that trade comp and pay him, $7.5 million plus on your cap? The Vikings currently don't have that space, but they could free it up if they really wanted to. But also, it goes back to, would the Bears trade in division? Now, the Vikings have traded with the Lions, with the Packers in division already with the draft, and does this make sense? Potentially. Jerry Hughes. Now, I do think that Jerry Hughes makes a lot more sense because I think that the Texans are completely in fall down mode. Jerry Hughes, the veteran, formerly of the Colts, formerly of the Bills, has experience as a stand-up and a hand-in-the-dirt guy. 17 pressures, 4 sacks this season. Has had 2 multi-sack games this year with the map beep, bop, 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 boop. So that's two sack games. So he can still get after the quarterback's ass. And I think that if you bring him in a platoon rotational type role, basically just have him play on third downs, I think that would be fantastic. Plus, expense-wise, it would make the most sense. He would only count about $1.3 million in cap, and hell, trade comp, it may not even take a 6th. I mean, Caserio may take a 7th for him. Go ahead. And then K'Lavon Chaisson, this would be sort of a diet version of Brian Burns. Like, this would be a Ross Blacklock, Jalen Reagor type move, which actually makes sense for Kwesi. I mean, Chaisson's only 23. He was the number 20 pick in the 2020 NFL draft by the Jaguars. He hasn't gotten the time of day this year. Of course, it is the Josh Allen show. It is the Walker show down in Jacksonville. So Chaisson, who's been dealing with injury, and he would be a value in terms of cap, in terms of trade comp. I mean, hell, the Jaguars may even take a conditional 7th. So I think that one could make sense because that one is a combination of building for the future, maybe not contributing right away, but who knows? But I mean, of course, the gambler in me wants to go all in with Brian Burns because I think that he's going to be a cornerstone of any team for the next, I don't know, decade or so. I think that he's a premier edge rusher. Quinn, I'm actually sort of out on Quinn, just in terms of the cost that it would take, and also there would be a premium trading in division, whatever. Jerry Hughes makes a lot of sense as a veteran. Hey, can contribute right away, sure. And then Chaisson would be that reclamation project type guy. And like I said, the Vikings are certainly stocked up at the edge rusher position with Daniil and Za'Darius and Wanham and Patrick Jones, and even Luigi Villain, the UDFA, I think has some game to him. But you can never have enough. Plus, this would allow you to deploy Daniil Hunter as a 5-tech or as a traditional 4-3 defensive end, hand the dirt, get after it. So just get as many of these dudes on the field on third and long. Just make life hell for the opposing offensive line and quarterbacks. Would love to see it, man. Would love to. But your thoughts are thoughts. Our case why the Vikings should consider trading for an edge rusher. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.